Hey guys, before we get started, I do want to give you a warning that today's video is a little heavier and a bit more adult-centric than usual. So if you know me in real life and you're not interested in hearing my thoughts on those things, or if you're just not prepared to hear a conversation that's more about adult topics like reanimation, life, death, babies, and sexuality, then I politely ask you guys to skip this video and wait for the next one.
Monsters do have their place. In your nightmares, in the deep, in your favorite horror movies.
Hello, my spookies, and welcome back to our Spooky Oasis. If you're new around here, my name is Mandy Spooks, and here we celebrate the magic of Halloween and spooky pop culture every day. Today's video might seem a little off topic, but I promise you it's not, and I'm going to explain why. But Poor Things has officially hit Hulu, and I could not continue with my life honestly without talking about this movie. This movie meant so much to me as a spooky girl, as a advocate for women empowerment, as just a female, as someone who loves pop culture. This movie just meant a lot. It was so well done. There is so much I needed to say about it, and I was just like, I need to tell the world how much I love this movie, why it meant so much to me, and why it should be something we're talking about more in the spooky community. So let's get right into it. I mentioned Poor Things came out a couple of months ago. It is already available for streaming on Hulu. It stars Emma Stone. Emma Stone, the one from Easy A. Yes, that Emma Stone. I am so proud of how far she has come. So I'm going to quickly read you the IMDb summary. It says, the incredible tale about the fantastical evolution of Bella Baxter, a young woman brought back to life by the brilliant and unorthodox scientist Dr. Godwin Baxter. The movie also stars Mark Ruffalo and Willem Dafoe, and I thought the casting was just chef's kisses. This movie was just the Frankenstein story I didn't know I so desperately needed in my life. Like, I thought I needed a women empowerment Bride of Frankenstein, and then Bella Baxter was born, and I was like, where has she been my whole life? Born or reanimated? Reanimated would be a better term. I don't feel like the summary of this movie gives it justice, so I'm going to kind of tell you how I interpreted it, and we are going to have spoilers. Like, it's impossible to talk about this movie without spoilers, so if you don't want them, stop now. But if you do want them or you've seen it, let's keep going. So, to me, this movie is more about I'm just going to tell you what it is, in my opinion. So this movie is about a woman who commits suicide at the beginning, and you don't know why or what has happened to her, but you know that she has somehow been reanimated by her maker, who is Godwin Willem Dafoe, but she calls him God, which I thought was just like such a clever way to name him, honestly. And he tells her a story at the beginning, but you know he's clearly lying, and you eventually find out that what happened was she was pregnant when she committed suicide, and it was really crazy when I found out, and I almost was lost at this part of the movie, but we find out that she was pregnant, and he puts the baby's brain inside of her brain, and in my head I was like, how does that work? Because isn't the baby's brain tinier than hers? Like, would it fit? I had a lot of questions, but Rudy was like, suspension of disbelief, forget about it, move on, Mandy. So I was like, okay, we're moving on, we're getting past the weirdness of this. The actual scene where the brain is transferred was just like so good as far as like the Frankenstein vibes go. The entire first portion of this movie that's black and white was just like classic horror vibes, in my opinion, and that's why I'm just like, why isn't the spooky community talking more about this film? Because at the root of it, I felt this was more of an actual Dr. Frankenstein movie than Lisa Frankenstein was. Like, this movie got all of those like science vibes I was expecting from Lisa Frankenstein, and it's just like, to me, I was just mind blown of like why this hasn't become a hotter topic in the spooky community, honestly. So moving past that, the movie ends up being more about what a woman would actually behave like if she did not go through life being told how to conform to polite society. And what I mean by that is we get to see a woman in a full-grown woman's body, but with the brain of a child that hasn't already been programmed and told how to behave, what to say, what's appropriate, what's not. And for me, that was just like, honestly, for me, this movie was everything that Barbie wasn't. And I'm not gonna sit here and say like, oh, I'm a Barbie hater. Like, I was not a Barbie hater. When I saw it, I loved it. I cried. It spoke to me. But ever since leaving the theater for Barbie, I've never been drawn to watching it again. And it's left me feeling like that was a great movie for women empowerment, but it wasn't accurate. And what I mean by that is because they were trying to cater to this like PG-13 audience and for it to be like for kids still, I felt that they compromised a lot of the realities of actually being a woman. Like, I think America's monologue about what it's like being a woman really hit home. Of course, that was the tearjerker. I also cried when they talked about how mothers stop so that their daughters can go further. And there were so many good things about it, but where for me it fell short was it didn't talk about like the nasty parts of being a woman sometimes. Like, there's jealousy amongst women, there's pettiness, and then there's the sexuality component that just like wasn't addressed at all. Like, they made it seem like maybe that's something that Ken wants, but she's just like not it, like doesn't even think about it, basically. Like, sex doesn't exist in this world. And for me, that was where it was like, yeah, this was great, but I don't feel like it was really forthcoming or like an accurate depiction of being a woman now. It was more so like a dream world of what women wish our world could be like, you know? So watching this movie was just like an immediate, like, this got everything that Barbie got wrong, but it got it right. And that is why I'm so passionate about talking about this movie. So I believe Barbie and this movie are up against each other for Best Picture in the Oscars. And I don't know if this will be coming out before or after the Oscars, but I will just say it now. Like, I hands down think that Poor Things should be getting way more attention for what it was, for what it stands for. I think 1000% it is the Best Picture. I haven't seen all of them, but I can tell you, like, this movie is not something I would normally like. Like, when I saw a trailer for it, didn't even realize what it was about. Rudy was the one who told me, like, oh, it has like Frankenstein vibes, which is why I started paying attention to it. But like, this was not a movie I would ever typically go watch. I don't like period pieces. I assume that like period pieces are usually going to be too slow for my taste. Like, this movie was a lot more on the experimental side, which I also don't like. So it had everything going against it that could possibly be the case for me. And as soon as the movie started, I was completely like so immersed into it, like to the point where like I have notes for you guys. And at a certain point, I just stopped taking notes because of how much I was enjoying this movie. It just, for me, was like, wow, there are a lot of taboo topics in this film about being a woman that never come up because it's not polite, it's not right as a woman, right? And if you see the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, everywhere from her discovering how to satisfy her body to speaking up for herself, being an advocate, making an honest living for herself, like, it just touched on everything that is like the reality of being a woman. I think the only thing it was missing was like the realities of friendship with women, but even then, like, that wasn't necessary to really resonate with being a woman and capturing like the true horrors of being a woman in this society. And I was so shocked to find out that it was not written by a woman. They relied heavily on Emma Stone to provide guidance and give feedback, but it was actually originally a novel written by a male. The screenwriter was male, the director was male, so Emma Stone, I feel, is just like not getting enough credit for how amazing this film was and how well it spoke to the female experience. The other thing that I really loved about it was, from the spooky perspective, of course, there are tons of Frankenstein vibes, but what I really love is that we're seeing how women would behave like without society's input, right? And a lot of the things that this character does are spooky by nature. And that makes me feel like, would most normie women be more spooky if it wasn't so taboo? Like, I get that a lot of this is because she's growing up in a scientific environment that involves stabbing, but throughout the film you see her like loving to like stab things, and she's so curious about like life versus death. And even the part where she's either like stabbing a corpse or she's like wanting to kill a frog, and she's like in the leaves, like playing with the leaves. And it's just like, for me, it was like, wow, she is a spooky girl. Like, she is a spooky girl at heart. And it's because she hasn't been programmed to know that those things are bad. And it was just really cool to see that interaction. And it just made me think too, like, how many more spooky people would there be if society wasn't telling people that that's not polite society, as they would refer to it. So that was one thing I really loved. The other thing that I really loved was how insane she drove Mark Wahlberg's character. Like, I found it so hilarious because for me, it was like, I know as a woman that we drive our husbands, our partners, our boyfriends, we drive them insane, right? But because we're crazy, we're a lot to handle sometimes. But seeing this movie, like this relationship play out in this movie was just like, this is how women would drive men crazy if we didn't conform to society when it came to like making up our own rules, wanting to explore, discover more about our sexuality, all of those things. I feel like when men play games with girls, it's very power driven. It's very like they have the upper hand against you, versus seeing it play out from the woman's perspective. It was very like explorative, adventurous. It wasn't malicious. It was never about her having that control over him or wanting to play games with him. She was just trying to live and experience things, because to her, like, everything was an experiment based on how she was brought up. So I really enjoyed this aspect of the movie, like seeing how relationship dynamics would change, how we would drive men crazy if we were the ones taking like the lead and making up these like games, you know? I don't know how to put it into words, but that's just like the best way I could describe it, is like men drive women crazy when they're playing games. They're not like saying who, like they're seeing other women, that they're not committed, like all of these things. It just feels so malicious when a guy does it, but when this character did it, it wasn't malicious. It was just like a part of her wanting to live and experience things like without the emotional attachment to it, and seeing how a man would react to that was just hilarious. Like, I couldn't get enough of it. It was just so funny, and for it to be Mark Ruffalo of all people is what made it even funnier. I also wanted to say that they did such an amazing job with the God to Bella dynamic, because since the very beginning, even in the scene where she's like on him on the, like they're on the bed and she's like has her leg over him like the way a little girl would, I was like, man, that must have been like a really awkward scene for them to film. But then he like immediately draws the line when she's like, oh, stay, and he doesn't. And like from the very beginning, there's like a very clear father-daughter dynamic. It's very respectful. And I thought that the movie did such a great job of like writing that line and understanding like what would make this like not appropriate, other than like choosing to bring a woman back to life and putting her baby's brain in her. But yeah, so I thought that that was really nice. I was really disappointed that at the end, it almost looks like she's gonna be putting Willem Dafoe's brain inside of the nasty husband's brain or body so that he can like live on and his geniusness could live on, but that's not what happened. So I was kind of disappointed by that. What else? I feel like I'm all over the place. I really just wanted this to be a quick video to tell you guys like how much I love this film and everything it meant. But there was also like the music scene where she's exploring Lisbon and she just like experiences music for the first time. Like that scene got me, like I got so emotional. I didn't cry, but I definitely like it struck an emotional chord in me, because like seeing her react to hearing live music and it like touching her to the point where like she got emotional was just like so beautiful to see, because I think everyone has reached a point in their life at some point experienced hearing a song and just getting like so overwhelmed with emotion by how beautiful it is. So that was really nice. I also really loved the cinematography, the set design, the costume design. It was gorgeous. Like I really loved how they played into the surrealism with the sets. Like a lot of the backdrops were actual paintings, and a lot of it was just so like futuristic, but not, because it was Victorian, but then there were these like futuristic elements to it because of all of the like science involved in the theme, because of like the whole Frankenstein thing. And it was just so beautiful seeing like the world through rose-colored glasses for her, because we go from seeing her trapped and locked in this like black and white world to where she starts to live, it goes into color. and the colors are so vibrant, they're so beautiful, the backdrops are gorgeous, and it's because you're seeing life through her perspective. Like us who have lived our whole lives, like we go out and it's like, oh, the clouds look pretty today, versus she's never seen them, so they added this like extra surrealism and beauty to them, which I thought was just done so well. Other moments that I really loved were, of course, when Mark Ruffalo's character is telling her like the 3 phrases she should say, and she returns by like doing it inappropriately. Like, it's so sassy. I also really love how they touch on how men don't like when women want to be educated and read and like have goals. So it's just like so many things about being a woman and how we would live differently if we weren't programmed to polite society. Like, it was just really nice to see that come to life in such an unorthodox way. And I really wish that this movie was just getting more of the attention it deserves, but it's not, because it's not palatable the way something like Barbie is for the masses. I also just really appreciated like how they remove the emotional part of sex for women. I think like as women, we are given like so much pressure since the moment we're growing up about like how precious virginity is and how it's so sacred, and if you have too much of it, you're too sexual, but if you don't have enough of it, you're a prude. And it's just like all of these things are played into society, and like as the movie goes on, like it does such a good job of showing like how a woman discovers her body, her sexuality, to owning it, and how a woman can own it, and it doesn't have to be on a guy's terms. And even touching on sex work, like there were just so many things this movie touched on in such a not, what's the word, like in a tasteful way. I felt like it was never raunchy or like, oh, this is so awkward to watch. Like, it was just so like simplified. Like, it simplified all of the things that society over complicates about how women grow up, about how they view sex, just all of that. Like, I can't shut up about it. I also really enjoyed the music for the film. I thought it was done really well, balancing again like the beautiful like harp sounds and the piano to like the more like screeching violins and just like the uneasiness. I think the music added a lot of those like classic horror vibes for me, and just like really complemented the movie so well. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I could go on and on and on about this movie, but I think that it speaks for itself, the fact that it had over 11, I think it had like 11 Oscar nominations, which I was really proud and like happy to hear about. And I really hope that they win majority of those, because like I said, it was just done so well. So if you haven't checked it out yet, this is definitely your sign to check it out on Hulu. If you are willing to have an open mind, of course, about, like I said, reanimation, undead or unborn babies, and sexuality, because there is a lot of talk about like women empowerment and just like owning their sexuality and taking control of how society views those decisions, honestly. So yeah, I don't even have to like do a whole like how many stars would I give this or how many bats, because it's freaking bats. It would be a 5 out of 5 freaking bats for me. I would give it 6 if I could. Like, this film was just like not anything I expected. The fact that it had like everything I don't like about films, and it just like flipped it. Like, the storytelling was just so good. I loved every single second of this film, and I will 1000% watch it again. So I hope that you watch it too. Until next time, sending you golden kisses. Bye.